Well, the latest Case-Shiller numbers were out at the top of this hour, showing prices are down more than 7% compared to a year ago. The creators of that index, Yale professor and economist Robert Shiller and economist and Wellesley College professor Carl Case, are talking with Tom Keene and Ken Pruitt on surveillance right now. So let's listen in.
The big factor is the option arm recasts that are not changing the mortgage rate, but putting a huge increase in the payment.
Let's dive into that right now. Betty Lou and all on Bloomberg Television. Good morning. Tell us about this option arm reset. This is something we've heard 3 times this morning on Bloomberg Surveillance.
Well, that's because it's a looming problem. People who got option arm mortgages, some of them had a limit on how far they could have negative amortization, and then when that hits, and also there might have been a 5-year limit on their deferring amortization. So they have a sudden major increase, which is swamps much bigger than the interest rate increase that we might have.
Carl Case, is that enough to slow down the improvement of the Case-Shiller index?
Oh, there are plenty of things getting in there are headwinds here. There's the unemployment, and the resets are clearly a huge problem, and the pipeline is not clearing. Everybody's behaving in a bid-ask, with the bid-ask spreads being very wide.
Well, Bob Shiller, does this essentially mean more foreclosures? Just when it appeared things were getting better, now we have more vacant homes thrown on the market.
Well, the number of mortgages in default are a pretty good indication that there will be continuing foreclosures, and not just subprime, it'll be prime mortgages. This is creating a huge shadow inventory of homes that are still owned, but they're going to be on the market in the next year or so.
Well, let me ask you this. One of the things we'd like to point out here is that when you hear that figure for foreclosures, that's everything from a late payment to actual seizure of the property. Is there some sort of formula here for you get, X number of notices from the bank that you're in default, and the proportion of those people who have their house actually seized?
Well, that's what people who do research on this have tried to formulate. But the problem is that we're living in a changing world. And one factor that I think is growing in importance is that people are less morally constrained against defaulting. They're talking about now as a default option. Well, if you look in your mortgage contract, it doesn't say you have an option to default anytime. Yeah. It doesn't say that, but people are starting to read that in. And so that's going to change. I worry that that will change the rate of default, even for a rate of foreclosure and for a given rate of...
But it's never...
Go ahead, Carl.
It's never been a good assumption to assume that people don't act in their own self-interest, and as much as like to rely on sort of non-self-interest or public interest, people get booked underwater, and that option looms. It's a problem.
With the great honor of having both you on here, let me go to this chart, folks, on the Bloomberg and the level of the Case-Shiller index. I mean, Bob Shiller, to be honest, we're back at a 2003 level. Where do you presume we will go in 2010? Do we stabilize here and flatten out, or do we get any buoyancy that gets us back to, say, a 2004 level?
Well, it's very hard to forecast these things. One thing, though, that strikes me when you look at the data is that it has in the past gone in long trends. The uptrend was from 2007 to 1997 to 2006. Right. That was like 9 years. And we're now on a downtrend. We have been, subject, except for this recent uplift. Uplift perhaps caused by aggressive stabilization policy, like the
tax credit and all that. Well, let's continue with this. Thanks so much, Betty Lou, and all of Bloomberg Television for stopping by today.